Good evening and salutations, my GH fans. Um, this episode seemed like a lot of padding. Like, it wasn't the worst episode in the world, but it definitely seemed like it was a lot of padding. Um, I mean, hell, let's start off with Drew and Michael for a minute. What he really did was talk about Carly. Michael's still pissed off at Carly. They talked about Sam. As far as, is there any prospects or anything like going on with Drew and Sam? And he's like, nah, because Dante's in the picture and, he's a good guy. Blah, 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 blah. But the Sunny stuff was kind of interesting because, back in the day, Michael used to always sit there and try to fix a lot of their stuff, a lot of their problems. Michael was the fixer of the family. And, he's still pissed off and mad at Sonny as far as protecting Nina and, letting her get away with it, letting him get away with, you know, hiding him from his family. So I get that. Um, and, and Drew is like, listen, at the end of the day, you gotta let your parents work this out. And on one hand, I understand where Michael's coming from as far as protecting his mom. But on the other hand, it's like, bro, you gotta sit there and try to understand where Sonny's coming from too. And constantly just being mad and angry and defensive. I mean, how there was one point where Drew felt, kind of bad as far as leaving Sonny, his world, and everything like that behind. Second. Michael was like, I think that was a good idea as far as like distancing yourself from him. And like the way he was like there talking about it, I was like, damn, bro, you're like mad angry. Like, I get it. I get both sides of it, but I think maybe he just should kind of take a step back and try to understand where his dad is coming from, a little bit, instead of just being so hard on him. Now, it was kind of interesting that, Michael was like, listen, if you want to sit there and take back Aurora Media, I'll step away. But, Drew was like, you're doing a great job. And besides, like, that chapter of my life is over as far as like, I did that with Sam because we wanted to kind of do our own thing, but there's no him and Sam anymore. So, which is the question, like, all right, so who is he going to sit there and be with? Because, at the end of the day, it's always like, these couplings and who's going to be with who and blah, 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 blah. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, what is going to go on? Is it going to be some sort of love triangle? I don't know. Now, Sonny and Carly start off the exact same way that they've been doing it before. Sonny wants to then get close. Carly wants her time in her space. Like, you get to a point where it's like, bro, you're exhausting me at this point. I get where you're coming from and you're my guy, but you're not doing yourself any favors. Now, there's one point where, Carly's like, they kind of tag me as far as like, did you take your meds and stuff like that? And Sonny tries to, change the subject or whatever. And I'm just like, this is only going to get from bad to worse. Because when Britt comes in there and, Carly leaves to go to work, Brick is they talk about a new player in town that took out one of his rivals, or no, took out somebody that was important to Sonny as far as his business is concerned. And Sonny seems like he's paying little to no attention. Um, and I'm just like, bro, this is my business. Now when I was sitting there reading the comments and stuff, as far as Jason was his go-to guy. When Sonny was sitting there dealing with whatever mental breakdown or whatever he was going through, he had Jason to sit there and watch his back. He had Jason to protect his interests. And he doesn't have that anymore. So I'm like, bro, it's even more important for you to be on your game now than even before because you don't have anyone else to sit there and watch your back. You got to sit there and do all of that. And it's not they're trying to trust like an underling or whatever. That dude may sit there and try to, screw you over. So, if Brick is not there talking, you might want to sit there and listen. On top of that, Brick was like, listen, you got practically one too many people in your life or whatever. You got Nina, you got Carly, that's one too many women. And at first, it seems as though Sonny wasn't really sitting there paying attention, but this is also due to the fact that he's not taking his medication. Um, and so I feel like everything that he's doing, or everything he's going to be doing moving forward, is either going to be a little bit off, or something that he wouldn't normally do. Start making irrational decisions, doing things as far as being with Nina. And I gotta sit there and talk about the whole Nina and Brit thing, because that. And I'm really curious to sit there and see who this new player is going to be. And for some odd reason, I have a feeling like it's going to be Marshall. I don't know why, but I feel like, unless they're going to be throwing somebody else in there that's new, I feel like that might be the route to go. But I guess time will only tell. Now, Britt comes to sit there and see Nina, and listen, her whole purpose of seeing Nina is to sit there and try to get help for Brad as far as getting Mrs. Wu to back off. So she tries to play the whole, oh, you should sit there and try to pursue Sonny. Carly, is in a broken, Sonny's in a broken marriage, and like you may be something even doing him a favor from what I heard, and this time the third, this whole, oh, you're sitting there trying to look out for Nina, her best interest. No, you're not. You're only doing this to help out Brad with his problem. And how even Nina was like, yo, I don't have sway like that. I don't even, like, honestly, tell you the truth, I don't even think that he would actually, I don't even think that she would have that much sway if they were together in a relationship. And on top of that, Brad, you honestly think that Sonny is going to want to help Brad out? Are you kidding me? I get it. That's her bestie and probably one of the very few friends that she actually has. But I mean, come on, bro. You're usually smarter than this. This is exactly what happens when you get emotion. You get so emotional that logic and things that you would normally do kind of go out the window. Um, and there's one point where, Britt gets upset and she's like, well, listen, if you're not going to sit there and help me, then I'll just go to Sunny myself. I was like, why didn't you just do that from the start? Why don't you just go directly to the source from the start? Hell, you would actually have a better chance than if you was to get Nina involved. I'm just, I'm literally just like, what sense did that make for you to sit there and go to Nina first? Now, I would have made it would have made more sense for her to sit there and go to Sunny. Sunny says no. Okay, cool. Let me take a different route. But and of course, she gets a progress report from Avery when she picks up the phone, and it's like, oh yeah, well, Carly's not even home, so this may be your chance. I'm like, okay, sure, why not? Marshall comes to sit there and see Epiphany about a broken wrist now, but then he just wants to sit there and find out what's going on. Like, why did she pretty much ghost him? Um, that was kind of interesting. She did get to a point where she was talking about that she wanted to be a doctor at first. But then she was like, life got in the way and yada, yada, yada. And, Marshall was like, listen, it's never too late. Like, I came back to town. I didn't think I was going to do that. So why don't you sit there and, try to pursue your dream as far as being a doctor? Long story short, um, he asked her out, and she said yes. Um, yeah, that, that was pretty much about it. I'm gonna be honest. Her going out with Milo never really seemed like it made a lot of sense. Don't get me wrong. I've been in a relationship with women that were older than me too. Um, and whether that actually made sense or not is kind of hearsay. The point is, I've done it. But the thing is yeah, I never really quite understood that. Like, how did that work? Like, and then we never really got to see the relationship go. So when she was like, "Oh well, me and Milo broke up," I was like, "Man, that's so terrible," because I'm gonna miss all those times when y'all were and y'all did and y'all talked about. Yep, not gonna lie, I'm kind of drawing a blank here. So you know, in some way, in I guess in most ways, it makes sense for her to be with somebody, um, like Marshall, as opposed to being with someone like Milo. Then again, also being kind of a hypocrite because you know dated all the women. So Laura has a little chit chat with Curtis to sit there and catch up. They talk about Cyrus and his newfound religion and if it's real or not. But then they sit there and talk about Marshall. Talk about Marshall, and after hearing more about the story as far as like him going away and hiding because he got involved with some really bad people. Laura's like, listen, you may have to sit there and face the possibility that it might have been beyond his control, and more or less, you might want to sit there and think about maybe giving him a second chance, maybe sit there pursuing some sort of relationship with him. But at the same time, Marshall doesn't really seem like the most honest and forthcoming. And Curtis is like, listen, he told me to sit there and stop asking questions because if I don't, I may put him, TJ, and even Stella in danger. And it's just like, all right, so that type of stuff may happen, but yet you're still sitting there trying to find out information after he just told you that if you do that, there's a good chance that. Not gonna lie, it didn't really seem like it went that much of anywhere because here's the thing: we already know that despite his misgivings, despite the way that Marshall has been very skeptic and cryptic and stuff like that, we all know that Curtis, even on a subconscious level, wants to sit there and give Marshall a chance, wants to have that relationship with him. I mean, that's his dad. Regardless of how he feels, there's always going to be a part of him, even if it's like a 2% part of him that wants to have a relationship with his dad. So when Laura said that, it was like, this is nothing new. This is why I'm sitting there saying that some of this episode was a bit of padding, mostly a bit of padding. Now Carly goes to see Diane, and basically, more or less, it's that they talk about contingency plan. If things go sideways, she may need to sit there and retain her services. But Diane was like, listen, let's just keep this on a friendly level, like as friends, because well, I'm representing you normally, and I also represent Sunny. So, like, unless you actually put me on retainer first, we can't have whatever sort of hypothetical conversation we're gonna have. And pretty much what Diane was saying is like, listen, before you make any decisions, just think. Just give yourself some time and some space before you start coming up with the possibilities of you ending your relationship, because Carly kept thinking like, is it right to sit there and stay in a broken marriage and this, that, and the third, and yada, yada, yada. And this is all mostly because Sunny keeps that they're trying to push and push and push and push and push, instead of giving her the time and space that she needs. But then Sonny is also being kind of irresponsible because he's not taking medication, so everything that he's doing is kind of being a little bit offset by the fact of his lack of medication. So there's that. Hmm. I feel like that's pretty much about it. Instead they're talking about padding, I'm like, it's been padding for quite a while. You know, um, except for the stuff like the last time stuff was just interesting was when Jason was off in Greece or whatever, so that they're trying to rescue Britt and do all that stuff. Then the time before that was when Cyrus came to town and just kind of just mixing things up. And when Nell was there and she was acting like a damn fool. Um, and I've noticed that for a while with General Hospital. It's not that they're saying that the show is bad because they do have interesting moments in the show. They do have interesting characters, but sometimes things just feels kind of like padding. You know, like okay, yeah, they talked about Luke and Luke being dead, which we all know probably not the case. But how long are we gonna sit there and wait till we find out what happened to Luke? Is he actually gonna come back on the show, or like what's gonna go on with his character? You know, I mean, I remember him saying like he was done with the show, he retired or whatever, and then he came back to sit there and give Tracy a send off. This is after he said he was done, he was retired from the show. And then he came back. But now it's talking about Luke's death, so it's like, well, how long are we gonna sit there and wait? Like, how long are they gonna sit there and draw this out? You know, I've asked this in my BNB review, and I want to sit there and ask this in my GH review. Because a lot of times I don't like to sit there and be a negative Nancy, but there's times where I'll sit there and look at an episode like this and be like, wow, this wasn't a bad episode, but it felt padded, you know? And so my question is, and it's something I gotta sit there and think about myself, my question is, what makes you still a GH fan? Like, what is it that you really love about the show still that you love, tuning into and watching? Um, Other than, well, it just feels like it's natural. Like, I'll give you an example to some extent. There was a point I wasn't watching Days of Our Lives, but I kind of missed it because I got used to sitting there watching it. Been watching it for a little bit, and I just kind of stopped and I was like, this feels so weird. So, what is it, that makes you still want to watch the show besides the fact that you've probably been watching it for years? Um, yeah, I feel like yeah, I think I kind of worded that question right. So, with that being said, I'm going to go. I want to thank you for watching. Be safe. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And I will see you in the next video.